G'day everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing some pretty heavy duty modifications to my old Patrol. It's sort of been neglected a little bit and a bit unloved, and yeah, there's some parts that definitely need attention. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. Let me take you for a walk around first, give you a bit of a look at the truck and show you what it is that we actually need to fix, because at the moment it's a bit dangerous to drive, and we can't have that. Alright, let's go. Let's get into it. So what we have is my 1985 MK Nissan Patrol. Now, I brought this thing 2 years ago? 3 years ago? No, 2 years ago. And it was, if I can find some photos, I'll put them up. It was really bad. The rust had just gotten into this thing like you wouldn't believe. So I undertook a pretty substantial rebuild. It was full body off frame, everything, went right through, cut all the rust out and resprayed the whole thing in Raptor. So she's been Raptor coated. I got mixed opinions on the Raptor, but anyway, and basically drove it like it. So made some extended shackles, gave it a little bit of lift, put some 33s under it, you know, nothing wild. It is a deluxe model, so it's got a lot of extras on it. Well, that's not ideal. And we refitted out a lot of this back, so nice big amp, second batteries there, solar controllers. It is fantastic 80s blue. Sub, amp, drawer, fridge normally lives here. What else have we got? I've got a custom 3-inch exhaust that I put under it. Fancy steering wheel. Not that fancy. But the inside's more or less standard. It's got factory seats. Factory suspension seats. That could probably do with a vacuum. Don't worry about that. But main reason why I brought it is she's pretty low Ks. So I brought it with 240,000 on it. It is a factory turbo SD33, so 3.3 litre turbo diesel. I have done a little bit of work to it, as you'd expect. So I'll pop the bonnet, I'll show you what's going on underneath. But that's not what we're working on today. So, oh, it's also got a stupid alarm on it. It's not an alarm, but anyway. Alright, I'll pop the bonnet and we'll show you what's going on under there, and then we'll get to work. Here we have the infamous SD33T factory turbo engine. It's a fair bit different if you sort of, I put a front mount intercooler onto it, which made a pretty big difference. Got rid of, they normally run a pre-filter up on top, which goes then across into the secondary filter on the side, down to the turbo, blah blah blah. Got rid of all that, so we just run the secondary filter, pardon me, which is more than enough. And yeah, the engine itself, what did I do? I've done a little bit of work, did a bit of porting internally, but nothing wild. And then basically it's more or less standard. What's not standard is, you probably can't see it down in there, but it is hiding down in there. There is a factory variable geometry turbo off a 3 litre Nissan Patrol. Made all that fit in there. At the moment I'm only pushing about 8 pound of boost. That's going to change. I'll jack it up and get it going a bit better, because this engine is not going to stay in here forever. But that's for a future sort of video. Don't get too carried away on that yet. Anyway, that's it. That's what we're running with. But the reason why it's dangerous to drive at the moment is because of the steering. Now, when I got it, everything was flogged out, as you can imagine. So I went through and converted it to single linkage steering. So these normally come down with like a steering box, or like a drag link here. So it comes off the steering box into the drag link, and then you've got an arm that goes down and that way, and then one that goes that way, and they get just flogged out, and then they get death wobbles. So they get really bad shimmies on the front tyre. The steering wheel shakes like nothing else, throws it out of your hand. Very dangerous. I converted it to this, like I said, so I just run a bar straight from the steering rack, steering box, straight down, welded some brackets on here to the lower steering arm, drag link if you want to, tie rod, whatever. And that worked really good for a while, but there's a nylon bush in there. And I think what's happened is that nylon bush has flogged out, and now I'm back to getting really bad steering wobbles again. It's not too bad cruising down the road, 70, 80 k's an hour is fine, but all it takes is one pothole, like bad pothole, and it'll set up an oscillation in the steering, and it'll rock the whole body and everything on top of the steering, throw the wheel out of your hands. Really dangerous. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert it to a high steer setup, and we're going to get rid of the drag, the ball joints on the end. We're going to replace them with spherical rod ends. And I've got some nice big heavy bar, which you'll see. But essentially we're going to come from here, straight off the steering arm. We're going to come down to this side. And what we have to do is make a plate that comes off the top, forward. So it'll come out sort of level with this knuckle here. And we're going to put this bar, we'll remake the bar, and it'll come across with a rod end in here. So it'll pick it up higher. And then this one here will stay where it is, and we'll replace that with another rod end as well. And same with the other end. So it'll all be spherical ends. Actually, I'll show you one so we know what we're talking about. So it'll all be spherical joints instead of flogged out ball joints. It'll be much more serviceable, so that's what we're going to run. So that's a M22, so 22mm thread and hole, and I've got some high tensile 22mm bolts that'll go through. That's what we're going to run. So I'll drill them and tap them so I can put a grease nipple in them. They're serviceable, replaceable, cheap. They're about 20 bucks. They're really not that expensive at all. But it'll give me my better steering angles back for that top bar, because at the moment it bump steers like crazy as well. So essentially what's happening is every time the axle goes up and down when I hit a bump, because of the angle of the steering bar, it's causing the wheel to move. And I can draw a picture later and show you why, but anyway, it's not good. So we're getting rid of that. Alright, that's enough talking. I'm going to get the rod out of the truck somewhere. Yeah, drag it out the back. We're going to, pardon me, cut it to length, drill it and tap it ready for the rod ends. And then we need to get to making that top section of the hub. So, alright, let's get that bar in the saw. Alright, well, because of a slight miscommunication, what I wanted was 35mm OD with a 20mm bore. In order to tap it for the size that I need 20.5. So 20 was good. I could run my 20.5mm drill, which I actually have, down the bore and we'd be sweet. What I ended up with, because of the way that the standard is, I ended up with 38mm OD with 17mm bore. So I have to come along and try and drill the 17mm bore out. Lucky it's not like, super hard steel. I mean, it's better than mild, but it's not ridiculous. So the other kicker is it means that I can't fit it in the lathe to do it in the lathe. I would have liked to have drilled them and bored them and tapped them in the lathe, but we can't. I've just got to hold it square and do it the best I can. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to drill and tap them and then start mocking up to make the top plate, and we'll have it done. Not a big job, just a little bit fiddly. So we've got our arms. Oh, yeah, we got them made, drilled and tapped. Now this is where the next lot of work has to happen. So this is getting replaced with the rod end, obviously, so the new one. We're going to drill out this arm, so this arm will get drilled out to 22mm to accept a 22mm bolt. And then we've got this big bit of plate which comes across the top. and then on this side, it's a bit hard to hold everything at once. On this side, the other rod end will sit up in here, and there's one long bolt that goes through everything with a spacer washer and everything in here. Now, pretty easy, not really the end of the world, but what we have to do, because I don't know if it'll show up very well on camera, but essentially this top plate is sitting on an angle. So we're going to have to mark the angle, put it in the milling machine and mill it, and mill the back side of it. So we're going to mill in here so that it sits square to, oh come on, too many things at once, sits square to this surface. That way everything's all square, the hole and bolt and everything can all be in one line, and yeah, we don't have to worry about making funky offset bushes. So anyway, so we're 75 by 20, there's plenty of material there. So that's what we're going to do next. There's our plate, nicely machined, all our angles. So the angles are on the plate, and then the holes were drilled obviously 90 degrees to the angle so that all the bolts go through square, and then there's a counterbore put on them so that the heads of the bolts sit down square. I just did them by eye with the mills. They'll be right, they fit. And I've got some stainless bolts. They won't stay. I will go and get some M10. I thought they were M8, they're not, they're M10. I'll go and get some M10, probably grade 12 high tensile bolts. I'll put it all together with that, but I'm going to mock all that up now, make sure it fits, and then I'm going to try and figure out a way to make sure I line up and drill this one in exactly the right spot. But let's get it bolted up and see what it looks like. So this is sort of point of no return here. Slab's bolted, that's fine, that's on. No worries. Now, I have to drill this hole out to 22 mil. That's the size of the bolt. I mean, the OD of this is 40, so there's still going to be plenty of material there. Looks big, but when it's all said and done, it's not the end of the world. Like I said, I need to try and figure out how to transfer this hole up into this plate in the right spot. So what I've done is I've made a drill guide. Now, the OD of this is 22. The ID is 14, and I've got a 14 mil drill. Drill will probably go slightly oversized, but that's okay because a little bit of clearance isn't going to hurt me on my bolt, and we're only talking by a thou or two. Ideally, I'd like to ream it. I don't have a reamer, so you know, we're working with what we can. Now this bolt's going to come through, and I'm going to tap this top plate. So either way, if there's a couple of thou clearance in the bolt in this section of the arm, it's really not going to matter because the whole thing will actually be pulled together and compressed with the other rod end in here. So, and a spacer plate. Anyway, sorry, got distracted. Drill guide. We'll drill that, insert drill guide, and then come up through and do a witness mark with this. I'll sharpen it so it's a nice, break it. So it's a nice pointy drill. And then that'll give me a good mark on this side. I can come back through and drill it and tap it. And then we've only got to drill 2 more holes out to 22. The whole thing can go together.
Yeah, about there. Towards you a little bit as you go on. Too far.
The big question. So we drilled and tapped. Well, let's start. When it starts, oh, I might tighten up a bit as it goes. Yeah, okay. Well, that's I didn't have a socket big enough in 1/2 inch, so I had to bust out the 3/4 gear. Wrong way. It goes in there pretty easy. I would say that's going to work. Yeah, pretty square there too, actually. I'll put that rose joint on the bottom, or tie rod end. See what it pulls up like, I guess. I would have liked to have got a better fit in the hub, but you know, like I said, it's all held in compression. It really can't actually go anywhere, so get my head out of your face, sorry. There we go, that's better. Gee, I hope my head hasn't been there the whole time. It'd make for a poor video, wouldn't it? Oh no, nope, never mind, not up yet. Not yet. There we go, now we are. And that has done up nice and square. Beautiful. Now, I know it looks like there's not much articulation on this, and there's not, but it doesn't have to be. These only move around like that. This one in here, so we'll have to trim back some there, and then I'll make a sort of standoff bush that comes down to allow for more articulation up on this one, because that will definitely need it. But that is pretty sick. Probably get a thin nut up on there if I wanted to for a jam nut. Probably wouldn't hurt. Whew. Alright, so we just got to drill this one out on the other side, and then this lower link can go in, and then we just got to drill the one out on the steering box and bring it down to here and do some trimming and some things, and we're back on the road. Nice. This bit here is probably the hardest bit, as far as trying to figure out, you know, where it's all got to go. And like you saw, it's all got to be square, and you know, all the angles of the dangles have to be good, which it is. Oh, all right, let's keep going. So here's my design to make it a bit lighter to start with, but also make it so that there's clearance for the rose joint at the end. So we're going to come in here, we'll try and put a radius in here and then around there, and it should look nice and pretty. I don't think it'll make it any weaker, so that's good. And also made some tapered bushes. I've got to make 4 more. I'm going to make 4 more, but anyway, they go either side of there, and they allow the oh, that one's a bit tight. They allow the rod end to move further than if it was just sitting hard up against the edge of the steel, so it'll make a bit more sense once it's all together. But yeah, I'm going to put this in the middle, and I've got some carbide hole saws. I've got a 2-inch one that I think is going to be good for getting that radius in there. The rest of it I think is just going to be good old angle grinder. It's too thick to plasma cut. Our plasma will only do 1/2 inch, and that's 20 mil. So it's too thick to plasma. Sure as hell I ain't going to do it with a hacksaw, so I think it'll be So in the interest of accuracy, I ended up pulling the pitman arm off the car. I had to pull the whole steering box off actually, because they're always a pain in the butt to get off. Anyway, at least now I can know that I can drill it nice and square and in the center, and it should be good. But of course, because we're working on old cars, as I was pulling the steering box off, I noticed that the input shaft seal for the steering box is leaking, so we're gonna have to do that while we're here, but one thing at a time. Rightio, we got updates. I'm gonna lay here for a sec. So this is where we are. So these angles, the fact that these are almost completely parallel, there's a tiny bit of separation, but they are more or less completely parallel, should eliminate the bump steer almost completely, hopefully. We're all made up over here. It's all bolted down. This is bolted tight. What I will do, I think, is come through and probably drill the front and put a grub screw in to lock this bolt, so this bolt can't rattle out. It can't come out. Yeah, we're all done up. We're sitting at about 2mm toe in on the outside of the tyres, which is a fair bit. These are pretty decent sized tyres. It should be more than enough to keep it going straight down the road. And yeah, steering box is back on. I'll give that a good degrease so I can make sure it doesn't leak. And then we'll give it a whirl. Now, what isn't on here is I don't have my steering dampener back. Now, I will put it back on, definitely. There's no two ways about it. But, yeah, for the road test, just to make sure that we're, somewhere near aligned and the steering wheel's straight and everything, it'll be fine. We'll take it for a quick burn, see where we're at. I'll put some grease in these before we go. And then we'll see if it was worth the effort. So, out on the road, how does it feel? Well, pretty good so far. Haven't really gotten any great speeds yet. Traffic is not really allowing me to do that. But, yeah, I mean, it feels a lot more planted, a lot more central. The steering feels a lot more responsive. So, I think we're on to a bit of a winner. We'll go for a bit more of a run and sort of see how we go. I still don't have the steering dampener back on, so it'll be interesting to see how we go. And my steering box, I went a little bit too tight on the steering box. It's, yeah, not quite returning to center in the middle of the range. So, but anyway, I'll go for a little bit more of a run, see if it wants to do anything silly, and then we'll go back, make a few little tweaks and adjustments, and yeah. But initially, it's great. No bump steer, which is good. So that was a big killer, as every time you'd hit a bump, the steering wheel would shimmy and the whole car would want to carry on. So it doesn't appear to be doing that. She still wobbles around like a hippo on roller skates, but a new set of shocks would go a long way for this old girl. So anyway, I'm gonna put the camera down and yeah, we'll see you back at the shop. All right, well, just got back from road test. First impressions, massive difference, like substantial difference. So the biggest thing I noticed essentially straight away is the steering wheel feels a lot more connected to the wheels. Now, I know that sort of sounds a little bit silly to say, but with the other setup, with the way the angles worked, it didn't feel very connected. You sort of felt like you were putting quite a big input in order for the steering to have any effect. And then that was also true on the other way too. Anytime you felt like you should have received feedback from the road, you didn't. It was just very vague. It's probably a really good way to describe it. Now it's not. And there is, I'm not going to say zero bump steer, because I don't think anything ever really gives you zero bump steer, but this is as close as you're ever going to get in a leaf sprung 85 model truck. Like, come on. There's still a little bit of horses for courses, but the bump steer is almost completely gone, and that's without the steering dampener as well. So I don't have that on at the moment. I will put it back on but I think I just want to feel it out and see how the whole thing goes first. I think at the very least I'll remove the spring off the steering dampener. So it's designed to hold the steering in the middle. Ideally, if you have enough caster angle, you don't need that. I was sort of using it to try and mask the fact that everything else was so crap. Now I've got it right, I shouldn't need it. I shouldn't need the spring. So I'll put a steering dampener back on, just not a return to center style. Yeah, that's about it. My steering wheel wasn't quite straight, so I've still got to just pop the ball joint off that one, or not the ball joint, the rod end off the pitman arm, and just adjust that so that it brings my steering wheel back in center. Other than that, steering box doesn't seem to leak, so that's good. That new seal's doing the job. So yeah, yeah, high steer on a patrol. Not a new idea, you know, plenty of people have done it before, but I'm really glad that I took the time to do it and machine that big top plate up, and yeah, I think that whole thing is just rock solid now. So, I mean, that's not where it ends for this truck at all. This is my toy, I guess, if you will. Oh, I got a lot of them, but this is one of my toys. So there's a lot planned for this thing in the future. I've got an engine conversion, which will definitely happen. I've already brought the engine, it's coming. No, it's not an LS, it is diesel. And it does have 8 cylinders, so that'll do for now. We're going to do a spring over axle conversion on this as well, which was another big reason for doing the high steer setup, so that when I do the spring over conversion, the angles are not as severe. So anyway, future down the track. And then it is going to get cut into a dual cab. That'll happen a little bit later again, but you know, there's plans. You've got to have plans. So yeah, I will put one big caveat at the end of this video, which is now, I guess. If you try and follow what I've done here, you want to do this yourself, go for it. I hold zero responsibility. This is all going to go through an engineer and get signed off legally, so it is on New South Wales roads. If you want to do it, that's fine. You do it at your own risk. Yeah, this was all trial and error for me, so yeah, that's it. That's all I'll say. You know, it's just, I suppose these days you've got to cover yourself, don't you? So yeah. All right. Well, anyway, we're going to leave it there. That's enough yammering. I'm going to have a beer and sit down and admire my handiwork. So, all right, subscribe, like, share, comment, all that jazz. Plenty more to come, and yeah, stay safe. We'll catch you on the next one.